Okay, we returned to the Chapter 4 review for Algebra 2. And for problems 6, 7, and 8, my examples here, we're going to find the horizontal asymptotes. What this depends on is the degree of the top and the bottom. So we're going to start with number 6 with degrees that are matching. This is degree 2, and you get that from the second power, which is the highest exponent. And down here, it's also quadratic. You have a degree 2. Well, in this case, your answer is just that highest degree portion of it. So y equals 4 over 6. And I'll finish simplifying that once I've labeled it as horizontal asymptote and put y equals 2/3. So you just take those leading coefficients, 4 over 6. Now, when your degree is higher on the bottom, you've got a second degree or quadratic down here, compared with the top, which is linear. You've only got a first power on that x, so that's degree 1. This one has an automatic answer, y equals 0, which is the x-axis. In other words, the graph, as you go further to the right and left, approaches the x-axis or gets closer to it. Okay, on the next one, you have a little bit of work to do, and you can kind of picture this without actually doing it. X times x is x squared, and then times this other x that's out there would give x cubed, which makes this degree 3 up here. And the bottom is quadratic, so it's degree 2. And when there's a higher degree on the top, you also have an automatic answer. There's no horizontal asymptote. So when the degree is higher, they just don't have, these graphs do not have that horizontal line that you get closer to. Okay, next we're supposed to find the vertical asymptotes and the holes. And you're going to want this in factored form. So when I get over to problem 11, I'll have some work to do. But at least this first one's completely factored, top and bottom. You can see the parentheses in it. Any factor that cancels out, and there are none in this first problem, indicate holes. Otherwise, you look down below here and it'll tell you what the vertical asymptotes are. We got a vertical asymptote at x equals 2. We have another vertical asymptote at x equals negative 4/5. Now, I marked a number of you half off because you left that part off. So you have to give me a vertical line, and that's why the x equals is important. Okay, the top of this one needs some work, so we're going to pull out the common factor of 3x. And let me copy the bottom. Now, this side here gives you a vertical asymptote at 7. But this side gives you a hole, and the reason it's a hole is, or how you can tell, is that you have a canceling factor there. That would cancel off. Anytime you have the same factor top and bottom, it generates a hole in the graph instead of a vertical asymptote. Okay, number 11, the top is just a pair of, it's a difference of squares problems, so let's get that factored. And I'll put some stardust on that other one down there. Got a leading coefficient of 6. 6 times negative 15 comes next. And the middle term is negative 1. And I think we can get away with 9 and 10 here, as long as we put the negative sign on the 10. So one side is 2 over 3. I'll write that down, 2x plus 3. And the other side is dividing here by 2 gives 3 over negative 5. So maybe you can see we got canceling factors there. That's going to be a whole at 5/3. Five thirds is 1.6 repeating 1.66666. So if you were actually graphing this, you could go a little to the right or to the left of that and trace, and you would actually get a height out of it. The other side here is a vertical asymptote. X equals -3/2. So you always look at the bottom side for vertical asymptotes and holes, and the ones that cancel off, like this one, are holes. All right. The next section here, we're supposed to find the x and y intercepts. I'm going to do the y-intercept on both of these first. Anytime you're on the y-axis, the x value is equal to 0. So picture 0 times 0 times 4, that would disappear. 0 times 28, that would disappear, and you'd be left with 48. And the bottom, you'd have 0 times 0, 0 times -3, and you end up with just this -10. So when you're doing the y-intercepts, you're going to simply set all the x's equal to 0, and you get 48 over -10, which is -4.8. That's your y-intercept. Let me label it here. My pen is having a little bit of trouble. And across the bottom, the x-intercept, let's find that one. What you do there is you set the y equal to 0, and that tells you this fraction is equal to 0, and the only time a fraction equals 0 is when the top equals 0. So this is how you do it. You set the top equal to 0, and you'll need to factor it. Let's first of all pull out the 4. And you can see there's a 1 in front of the x squared now, so I'm going to take advantage of that and avoid having to use the star. Plus 4 and plus 3 is how this one works. And before you get too excited, you have to factor the bottom for a different reason. This bottom down here is x minus 5 and x plus 2. And when you do that, you're looking for a common factor here and here, and nothing cancels off. So these are actually both zeros. And they are specifically x equals -4 and x equals -3. Those are your zeros. And this right here is your y-intercept. Okay, we're going to do a similar thing on the next one. I'm going to go a little quicker on it. For the y-intercept, you set all the x values equal to 0, which makes you ignore anything that has x in it. And that'll lead you to 40 over -8, which is just -5. So that's the easy one. And then the top one, this doesn't factor, so I'm not worried about holes because there's no factor up there and nothing will cancel with down here. So I just set the top equal to 0. You always set the top equal to 0 when you're doing this. And you're going to solve this by taking that over. I probably shouldn't have made this one. It's going to come out to have an I involved. So then it's going to be x equals positive and negative I root 40. I'll break that up to 4 times 10. And so that's going to be positive and negative 2I root 10. Yeah, I probably should have come up with one that didn't have a negative underneath that square root. But anyway, that's how you would do it. So that does it for page 3 of the notes, of the review, excuse me.